The hall was glowing with light, the polished wood floors reflecting the chandeliers above. Rows upon rows of seats were filled with people dressed in their finest clothes. The air smelled faintly of perfume and polished shoes, mixed with the scent of old wood and varnish. It was the night of the grand piano concert everyone had been waiting for. The famous concert pianist was known all over the country, admired for speed, precision, and the ability to make the piano sing like no one else could. People were whispering excitedly, talking about the evening and the pieces they hoped to hear, their voices creating a low hum of anticipation. In the far corner, nearly hidden by shadows, a janitor stood quietly. He had been working at the hall for years, sweeping the floors and dusting the instruments, always careful not to be noticed by the performers or the guests. He knew every corner of the hall, every crack in the wood, every sticky spot on the floor. But unlike most janitors, he had a secret. He loved music more than anything else in the world. He had spent hours practicing on the piano whenever the hall was empty, learning songs he would never play in front of anyone. The keys under his fingers had become like old friends, and the music flowed from him naturally when he allowed himself to play. Tonight, he watched the stage with a mixture of awe and nervousness. The pianist walked onto the stage with a proud air, a small smile on their face as the audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, and the janitor could not help but notice the way the crowd looked at the pianist with admiration. It was the same admiration he felt when he played alone in the empty hall, but it was distant, almost untouchable. The janitor shifted slightly, keeping himself in the shadows. He did not want to be seen. Yet, there was a strange boldness in him that night, a quiet voice inside that whispered he could play too, that he had something to show. When the pianist took a short break to speak to the audience, the janitor walked a little closer, curiosity and courage pushing him forward. He approached the piano slowly, almost hesitating, his hands brushing the polished wood as if asking permission. With a deep breath, he spoke quietly, almost to himself at first, and then a little louder. "May I play a little?" His voice was soft, but it carried across the room just enough for a few people to notice. The pianist, hearing this, turned with an expression that was half surprise, half amusement. "You? Play?" The words were sharp, and the laughter from the audience followed quickly. They thought it was a joke. The idea that a janitor would dare sit at such a magnificent piano and try to play in front of everyone. The janitor felt a sting of embarrassment but did not step back. He lowered his gaze, letting the laughter wash over him, and simply nodded. "I would like to try," he said. The pianist shook their head, smiling in a way that was not kind, and gestured to the janitor as if telling him to go ahead, but with a smirk that implied he would fail. "Go on then," the pianist said, their voice dripping with condescension. The audience murmured, unsure whether to encourage or laugh. The janitor could hear whispers, words like crazy and brave floating through the air. He walked up to the piano, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. His heart was pounding, his palms sweaty, but there was a calm inside that surprised him. He had practiced this moment countless times in his mind, imagining what it would feel like to play on this stage, in front of a real audience, in the same hall where the pianist now stood, waiting. He lifted his hands and placed them gently on the keys. The cool surface felt familiar, comforting in a strange way, as if the piano itself was welcoming him. The first note came out soft and tentative. The audience leaned forward, curious. They expected a mistake, a stumble, something to confirm their belief that this was a foolish attempt. But the note rang clear, honest, and pure. The janitor played another, then another, finding a rhythm that surprised even him. He had chosen a piece that spoke to the heart, simple in its melody but filled with feeling. As the music grew, the whispers of doubt in the audience began to fade. People stopped laughing and leaned in, listening more closely. The pianist, standing on the side, frowned. Their confidence wavered as the janitor continued to play with skill and emotion that seemed impossible for someone without formal recognition. Each chord was deliberate, each note a small story. The janitor's eyes were closed now, lost in the music, and the audience could feel that loss, the way he poured himself into every moment. For the first time, the crowd was silent, not because they were waiting, but because they were captivated. He played through a short piece, not yet daring to attempt anything too complex, but it was enough to create a hush over the entire hall. People who had come to watch the famous pianist now found themselves focusing entirely on the janitor. The irony was not lost on anyone. The one who had been laughed at, the one considered insignificant, was commanding attention in a way that the star performer had not yet done that night. When the janitor finished, there was a pause. The silence was thick, almost trembling. Then, a single clap rang out from somewhere in the middle of the audience. Another followed, and then more, until the hall was filled with applause. It was polite at first, hesitant, but it quickly grew, rising like a wave of astonishment and admiration. The janitor, who had expected ridicule, felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. He bowed slightly, acknowledging the audience with a humble smile, and stepped back from the piano. The pianist looked shocked. Their mouth opened slightly, trying to find words, but none came. The laughter had stopped, replaced by respect and wonder. The audience, still clapping, whispered among themselves about what they had just witnessed. How could someone, a janitor, have such skill, such feeling, such presence? It was unlike anything they had anticipated. The janitor returned to the shadows, not wanting to take attention from the moment, but feeling a quiet triumph inside. He knew that he had shown, at least for a few minutes, that talent and passion could exist anywhere, hidden in unexpected places. And he had done it without arrogance, without seeking fame, simply because music had called him to play and he had answered. The pianist, still on the stage, finally regained some composure. They clapped politely, a gesture that carried a mix of acknowledgement and humility. There was no mockery now, no smirk. The lesson had been delivered in the language that everyone could understand. Music. The janitor had spoken, and the world had listened, even if only for a brief, shining moment. The hall slowly settled back into its rhythm. The audience continued to watch the rest of the concert with a new awareness, a new respect for the power of someone who had been underestimated. The janitor, sweeping quietly in the corner, felt a quiet smile spread across his face. He had not sought recognition, yet he had received it in the purest way possible. And for the first time, he understood that greatness was not about applause or titles, but about courage, talent, and the willingness to take a step forward, even when the world expected you to step back. The janitor walked slowly down the hallway, his broom in one hand and a cloth in the other, but his mind was elsewhere. He had returned to his duties, pretending to sweep the floors, but the sound of the audience's whispers and clapping still echoed in his ears. He could not stop thinking about what had happened on stage. The memory of the piano, the feel of the keys under his fingers, and the silence that had fallen over the crowd filled him with a strange mix of pride and nervousness. He had touched something important that night, and he could not ignore the pull to go further. He paused near the back door of the stage area, taking a deep breath. The concert pianist was still performing, and the audience's eyes were riveted on the stage, but he felt a quiet determination growing inside him. He had always loved music, and he had practiced in secret for years, but now the stakes were higher. This was not just practice. This was a chance to show what he could really do. He thought about the piece he had played and how it had affected the audience. If he could do that again, maybe even better, he could finally step out of the shadows and let his music speak for itself. He knew it would not be easy. The pianist was a master, admired and skilled, with years of training and experience. People respected them, and their presence on stage was commanding. The janitor felt a wave of fear at the thought of facing the audience again, but it was mixed with excitement. He had a secret that the world had not yet seen, a talent that had been waiting for the right moment. And tonight, perhaps, was that moment. As the janitor wandered near the practice rooms, he stopped to watch another musician rehearsing. The notes were precise, perfect in timing, but something was missing. The emotion, the feeling behind the music, the soul of it was absent. The janitor realized that music was not just about skill. It was about connecting, about telling a story without words. That realization made his heart race. He wanted to tell a story too, one that would reach the people in the audience, one that would show that passion and love for music could come from anywhere. He went back to the main hall trying to stay unnoticed. The concert was still ongoing, the pianist playing beautifully, every note executed with technical perfection. The audience applauded politely at the end of each piece, yet the memory of the janitor's brief performance seemed to linger in the minds of some. He noticed a few heads turning, some people whispering, curious about the janitor who had dared to step forward. He smiled faintly, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Backstage, he found a quiet corner and closed his eyes. He began imagining the piece he wanted to play, hearing the notes in his mind, feeling the rhythm and the flow. He pictured the audience, their faces blank at first, then slowly opening with surprise and admiration. He could see the pianist watching from the side, their expression shifting from amusement to disbelief. The visualization calmed him, gave him courage, and made him more certain that he had to try. The janitor returned to the piano slowly, feeling each step like a heartbeat. He placed his hands on the keys, feeling the cool touch beneath his fingertips. The room was silent. The audience focused on the next piece from the main performer, unaware of the small figure preparing to play nearby. He let his fingers hover for a moment, feeling the anticipation building, then pressed a key gently. The sound was soft, barely audible at first, but it carried a confidence that he had not felt before. He started to play slowly, testing the piece, letting the melody take shape. Each note was deliberate, each chord chosen with care. The music began to flow naturally, and the janitor lost himself in it. He did not think about the audience, the pianist, or the reactions. He thought only about the music, about telling the story he wanted to share. The notes danced through the hall, soft at first, then growing with intensity. The janitor felt a connection, a powerful energy moving through him, carrying the music forward. As he played, a few people in the audience began to notice. They turned their heads, curious, whispering among themselves. Some thought it was part of the performance, a surprise element perhaps. The music grew, filling the space, reaching the back rows, spreading warmth and wonder. The janitor felt the rhythm, the emotion, and the soul of the piece flowing through him. He smiled faintly, realizing that this was what he had been waiting for all his life, the moment when his music could touch others. The pianist, backstage, began to notice the shift. The faint sound of the piano, the clarity of the notes, drew their attention. They stopped, their hands hovering over their own instrument, and listened. Confusion flickered across their face, quickly replaced by a growing sense of respect and astonishment. This was no ordinary performance. The janitor, untrained in the ways of fame and recognition, was playing with heart, with passion, with a depth that challenged even the skilled pianist. The audience grew silent. The whispers faded, replaced by awe. People leaned forward, eyes wide, captivated by the unexpected performance. Some felt tears prickling in their eyes, moved by the honesty and emotion of the music. It was simple yet powerful, not about showing skill, but about connecting with every person in the hall. The janitor played with precision, yes, but more importantly, with feeling that resonated deep within the listeners. Each note seemed to tell a story. Memories, hopes, dreams, and struggles could be felt in the flow of the music. The janitor had never imagined that his years of secret practice would lead to this, that the quiet hours spent in the empty hall would now speak to so many people at once. He felt a rush of joy, a sense of purpose he had never known. This was why he had loved music, why he had devoted so much of his life to it. It was not about applause, titles, or recognition. It was about touching hearts. As the piece continued, the hall seemed to transform. The grandeur of the space, the polished floors, the chandeliers, all faded into the background. There was only the music, the connection, the shared experience between the janitor and every soul listening. The pianist, still on the side, could not hide their astonishment. The arrogance and confidence that had been so strong earlier melted into admiration. They had underestimated the janitor, assuming that his role defined his ability, and they were being shown a lesson in humility. When the final note faded, there was a pause, a moment of breathless silence. The audience processed what they had heard, their minds catching up to their hearts. Then slowly a clap rang out. Another joined in, then more, until the entire hall erupted in applause. It was sincere, loud, and filled with wonder. The janitor bowed slightly, his heart pounding, feeling both relief and happiness. He had not sought fame, yet he had earned respect in a way that was pure and untainted. The pianist stepped forward, clapping along with the audience, their face showing a mix of humility and astonishment. There were no words, only gestures of acknowledgement. The janitor felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had shown, without arrogance or boast, that anyone could rise to greatness, even in the most unexpected ways. The audience continued to whisper, some approaching later to express admiration, some simply reflecting on the experience they had just shared. The janitor returned to his duties, sweeping quietly, but he felt a change within himself. He had discovered a new confidence, a recognition of his own ability, and a deep understanding of the power of courage and passion. The music had spoken for him, and the world had listened. He realized that the path ahead would still be challenging, that not everyone would accept or understand him, but he was ready. For the first time, he felt that he could step forward without fear, guided by the music and the truth of his own talent. The rest of the concert continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. People carried with them the memory of the unexpected performance, a reminder that greatness could come from anyone, and that true skill was measured not just in training, but in heart and soul. The janitor moved among the audience and performers quietly, aware of the new respect surrounding him, yet humble, knowing that the music was the true star. That night, he had not only played a piece. He had played a role in changing perspectives, teaching humility, and inspiring those who had watched. As the evening drew to a close, the janitor left the hall later than usual, walking down empty streets with a smile he could not contain. The lights of the city glimmered around him, but in his mind, he replayed each note, each emotion, each glance of astonishment from the audience. He understood now that music was more than sound. It was a bridge between souls, a messenger of feeling and truth. And he, a humble janitor, had become the voice of that message, even if only for a single unforgettable evening. The hall had grown quiet once again, the lights casting soft shadows across the polished floor. The concert pianist had resumed playing, their hands gliding over the keys with skill and precision. But in the back of the room, attention had shifted. Whispers traveled like a wave, carrying the memory of the janitor's performance, the simple yet profound piece that had silenced the audience earlier. People glanced toward the piano where the janitor had played, curiosity mixing with awe. There was a sense that something unexpected was about to happen. The janitor, hidden near the corner of the stage, felt a familiar pull. He had already tested himself, but now there was a desire to show a deeper side of his music, to let the audience feel what he truly carried inside. He took a deep breath, letting it settle in his chest, and slowly moved toward the piano again. His heart raced, but there was also a calm certainty. This was more than practice. This was a chance to share a piece of himself, to communicate in the language he knew best. He sat at the piano carefully, brushing his hands across the smooth surface of the keys. The cool touch grounded him, and he let his fingers hover, waiting for the perfect moment to begin. The hall seemed to lean in, as if it could sense what was about to unfold. The audience, still captivated by the main performance, began to notice the subtle movement near the piano. Some frowned, unsure if they should pay attention, while others leaned forward with curiosity, sensing the tension in the room. The janitor pressed a single note, soft but clear, and it echoed through the hall. It was enough to draw eyes and ears. He began playing slowly, letting the music build gradually. Each note was deliberate, measured, full of intention. He was not trying to show speed or technical mastery. He was telling a story. The hall seemed to respond, the air thickening with expectation, the silence deepening as people tuned in to the music. The janitor's fingers moved with a newfound confidence. The piece he had chosen was more complex than before, demanding attention not only for its melody but for the emotion it carried. The music swelled and softened, rising like a tide, drawing the audience in. People forgot about the famous pianist for a moment, forgetting why they had come to the hall. The janitor had captured their hearts, his performance speaking more loudly than any introduction or applause ever could. The concert pianist, now watching intently, felt a shift in the air. Their pride and composure wavered as they recognized the talent before them. This was no amateur display. The janitor played with precision, but more importantly, with feeling that penetrated every listener. Each chord seemed to tell a story, each pause carrying weight. The audience's reactions changed from curiosity to genuine admiration, and the pianist could no longer ignore what was happening. People began to whisper in astonishment. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the unexpected depth of the music. They leaned forward in their seats, captivated, caught between disbelief and awe. The janitor's performance was not about impressing with speed or complexity. It was about reaching the hearts of those who listened. The simplicity of the notes, combined with the emotion behind them, created a power that was impossible to resist. The janitor's hands flew over the keys with ease, yet he remained in control, balancing precision with feeling. The music rose and fell like waves, each movement carrying a sense of narrative. He imagined the stories he wanted to tell, the struggles, the hopes, the quiet moments of life that often went unnoticed. Every note was a word, every phrase a sentence, and the hall became a book that the audience read together in silence. The pianist, standing nearby, could not hide their astonishment. Their arrogance had melted into awe. They had underestimated someone they thought they could dismiss with a joke, and now they were witnessing something extraordinary. The janitor's music had broken the walls of hierarchy and expectation, proving that talent and passion could reside anywhere. The audience felt it too, responding with silence that was heavy with emotion, a collective acknowledgement of the beauty unfolding before them. As the piece progressed, the janitor closed his eyes, feeling the flow of the music in his veins. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only the connection between his hands and the keys, his mind and the melody. The audience felt that connection, the authenticity and sincerity that could not be faked or taught. They were no longer thinking about who he was. They were feeling what he felt, sharing in a moment of pure artistic expression. The janitor pushed further, daring to reach new heights in the piece. The music became more dynamic, rising and falling with emotional intensity. The audience was spellbound. Some gasped softly, moved by a particularly tender phrase. Others leaned forward, eyes wide, captivated by the crescendos and quiet moments that followed. The hall was alive with the energy of shared experience, everyone caught in the spell of the music. The pianist's expression shifted from disbelief to admiration. They stepped closer, almost instinctively, drawn to the sound. They could see the passion in the janitor's posture, the intent behind every gesture, the depth of feeling that guided each note. It was impossible to ignore. The pianist realized that they were witnessing a moment of true artistry, one that transcended reputation or training. This was a performance born of love for the music itself. The audience began to clap softly, carefully, unsure if they should interrupt the piece. The janitor, sensing their response, did not break the flow. He continued playing, letting the subtle applause blend into the rhythm of his performance. The music seemed to embrace the audience, wrapping them in warmth and emotion. Each note resonated, lingering in the air long after it had been played. The janitor felt a surge of joy and fulfillment. He had come to the piano with courage, and now he was sharing something that mattered, something that could not be ignored. The music carried his heart, his soul, and the years of quiet practice that had prepared him for this moment. The audience, once skeptical, was now fully immersed, caught in the story he was telling without words. As the piece reached its climax, the hall seemed to hold its breath. The notes rose higher, more confident, more powerful, and then fell gently, leaving a delicate silence in their wake. The janitor's hands rested briefly on the keys before continuing with a final, tender phrase. The music faded slowly, echoing through the hall, leaving an impression that could not be erased. When the last note faded, there was a moment of stunned silence. The audience sat frozen, processing the experience they had just shared. Then, one by one, claps began to ring out, soft at first, then louder and more enthusiastic. The hall erupted in applause, cheers, and murmurs of admiration. The janitor bowed slightly, a humble smile on his face, acknowledging the recognition without arrogance. The pianist approached, clapping along with the audience, their eyes wide with genuine respect. They extended a hand to the janitor, who accepted it with quiet dignity. There were no words needed. The music had said everything. The audience continued to applaud, some wiping tears from their eyes, others shaking their heads in amazement. The janitor had not only performed, he had transformed the room, created a moment that would linger in everyone's memory. The janitor returned to his quiet corner, the applause still echoing in his ears. He felt a mix of relief, pride, and gratitude. He had taken a risk, stepped out of the shadows, and shared a part of himself with the world. And the world had responded, not with mockery or indifference, but with awe and respect. The hall had become a place of connection, a place where music spoke louder than words, and where courage and talent could not be ignored. As the concert continued, the audience remained attentive, their hearts still touched by what they had witnessed. The janitor returned to his work, sweeping and tidying quietly, but he carried a new confidence, a sense of purpose, and a knowledge that he had made a difference, even if only for a few moments. He had proven that passion and dedication could shine through, no matter one's position in life, and that the power of music could bridge the gap between expectation and reality. That night, the hall felt different. It was no longer just a place for performances. It was a place where barriers could be broken, where hidden talents could emerge, and where the human spirit could be celebrated. The janitor walked home later, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, replaying every note, every chord, every expression on the audience's faces. He understood now that music was more than sound. It was emotion, connection, and courage. And he, once unseen, had become the voice of that truth, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who had listened. The hall seemed to vibrate with anticipation. The audience had already witnessed something unexpected, yet the atmosphere felt as if it could still hold more surprises. The janitor stood quietly, his hands brushing the keys lightly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room upon him. He did not falter. The first two performances had been steps, and now he was ready to fully immerse himself, to let the music tell everything he wanted it to. He began to play, each note deliberate, each phrase carrying emotion. This piece was different. It demanded vulnerability and strength at the same time. He wanted to reach everyone in the room, to touch their hearts with each sound. The audience fell silent, leaning forward instinctively, feeling the power of the music that seemed to flow not only from the piano but from the janitor himself. The melody was delicate at first, almost whispering, drawing the listeners in. The janitor's hands moved confidently over the keys, creating a harmony that was both complex and simple, emotional yet precise. Each note lingered, echoing in the air and in the hearts of the audience. It was impossible to look away, impossible to think about anything else. The room had transformed into a shared space of emotion and understanding. The concert pianist, standing to the side, watched in disbelief. Their initial amusement and doubt had long since faded, replaced by astonishment and growing respect. They realized that what the janitor was doing could not be measured by formal training alone. It was raw, honest, and utterly captivating. Each movement of his fingers, each rise and fall of the melody, conveyed stories that no words could capture. People in the audience began to respond instinctively. Some sat with tears forming in their eyes, moved by the beauty and sincerity of the performance. Others leaned forward, captivated by the crescendos and gentle pauses that carried meaning beyond music. The janitor played not for recognition, not for applause, but because the music demanded expression. He had found a voice in the piano that allowed him to speak to the hearts of everyone in the room. The intensity of the piece grew. The janitor's fingers danced across the keys with increasing confidence and fluidity. He was in complete control, yet the performance felt alive, organic, almost breathing with the emotions of the moment. The audience was entranced, hanging on to every note, every subtle shift in tone. The silence between notes became just as powerful as the sounds themselves, each pause charged with meaning and anticipation. The concert pianist's composure had completely changed. They moved closer, unable to resist the pull of the music. Their eyes reflected a mix of admiration and humility. They had mocked this moment earlier, assuming it would be a fleeting joke. But now they were witnessing a level of artistry that challenged even their expertise. The janitor had transcended expectation, and the hall could feel it in every corner. The audience's reaction became more expressive. Gentle whispers of awe rippled through the rows, but nobody wanted to interrupt the performance. Hands that had been still began to move instinctively in silent appreciation, some tapping lightly to the rhythm, others resting over their hearts as the music spoke directly to their souls. The janitor could sense the room's energy, feeling the connection deepen with each passing note. As the piece built to its climax, the janitor poured every ounce of emotion into his performance. He felt a rush of courage, a freedom that came from letting go of fear and letting the music take control. The notes became bolder, richer, more powerful, carrying a story of hope, struggle, and triumph. The audience responded instinctively, gasping softly, leaning forward, their attention rapt. They could feel every nuance, every subtle shift of emotion that the janitor expressed through the piano. The concert pianist watched with a mixture of disbelief and awe. Their earlier confidence and pride had melted away completely. This was not a performance that could be measured in technical skill alone. It was something deeper, something that resonated with the soul. They understood that they were witnessing a rare moment of true artistry, a display of talent and courage that could not be ignored. The janitor continued, building toward the final moments with precision and feeling. Each chord struck with intention, each note carrying the weight of the story he wanted to share. The hall seemed to vibrate with the energy of the music, the audience completely absorbed. Some felt tears streaming down their faces, others sat in stunned silence, caught between disbelief and admiration. It was a shared experience, a moment of pure connection. Finally, the music softened, the crescendo giving way to a gentle, lingering melody. The janitor's fingers rested lightly on the keys, letting the last notes echo through the hall. The room was completely silent, filled with the weight of what had just been shared. The audience sat in awe, unable to speak, processing the emotional journey they had just experienced. The janitor remained calm, a humble smile on his face, knowing that he had communicated something meaningful without needing words. Then, slowly, the applause began. One hand clapped, then another, until the entire hall erupted in a wave of appreciation and admiration. The clapping was heartfelt, sincere, and overwhelming. The janitor bowed slightly, his heart pounding with gratitude, feeling the connection he had created with everyone present. It was not about recognition or fame, but about sharing something true and beautiful. The concert pianist stepped forward, clapping with genuine respect. They extended a hand, acknowledging the janitor's talent and courage. There were no words, no need for them. The music had spoken, and the gesture said everything. The audience continued to cheer, some whistling, others standing in ovation. The janitor returned to a quiet corner, letting the moment settle, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. As the hall gradually returned to its normal rhythm, the atmosphere remained changed. People whispered about what they had witnessed, sharing their amazement and admiration for the janitor's skill. The pianist, once confident and dismissive, now carried a sense of humility and respect, having learned a lesson in the power of unexpected talent. The janitor continued his duties quietly, aware that he had created a memory that would linger in the hearts of everyone present. That night, as the audience filed out and the lights dimmed, the janitor lingered for a moment, reflecting on the experience. He had faced doubt and ridicule, Yet he had played from the heart, allowing his passion and skill to shine. The applause, the awe, and the respect were rewards, but they were secondary to the satisfaction of expressing himself fully through music. He understood that greatness was not defined by status or recognition, but by courage, dedication, and the willingness to share one's gift. The janitor left the hall later than usual, walking through quiet streets under the soft glow of streetlights. His mind replayed each note, each moment of connection, each expression of admiration and surprise from the audience. He realized that music was more than sound. It was a bridge between hearts, a universal language that could touch, inspire, and heal. And he, once unseen and overlooked, had become a part of that language, leaving an imprint that could not be forgotten. The experience had changed him, giving him confidence and a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he also knew that he had discovered a power within himself that would guide him for the rest of his life. The applause from the hall still echoed in the janitor's ears as he stepped back from the piano. He could feel his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of the emotions that had poured through him during the performance. The audience was on its feet now, clapping and cheering, some even whistling, and the energy in the room was electric. It was the kind of reaction he had never imagined, not even in his wildest dreams while practicing alone in the empty hall. The concert pianist approached, their face showing a mix of humility and admiration. They extended a hand to the janitor, who accepted it with a quiet nod. There were no words, just a simple acknowledgement that said everything. The audience continued to cheer, and people began moving closer, some taking out phones to capture the moment, others simply standing and applauding in genuine appreciation. The janitor's heart swelled, not from fame, but from the understanding that he had touched people, that his music had reached their hearts. Backstage, the hall staff and a few musicians came to congratulate him. Some shook his hand, others patted his shoulder, all expressing amazement at his talent. The janitor felt a warm glow inside, not from pride, but from the sense of connection that music had created. He realized that his years of secret practice, his quiet dedication, had led to this moment, and it was worth every lonely hour spent in the empty hall. The audience began to settle down as the concert continued, but the whispers of admiration followed the janitor wherever he went. People who had attended regularly, who had seen many performances, were still talking about the unexpected brilliance of the janitor's playing. They marveled at how someone so seemingly ordinary could create such profound music, and how the courage to step forward had changed the energy of the entire evening. The concert pianist, now seated backstage, reflected on their own performance. They had been technically perfect, precise in every movement, yet it had been the janitor's performance that captured the room. They realized that skill alone was not enough. It was the emotion, the courage, and the authenticity that resonated most. The pianist felt a shift within themselves, a newfound respect for the janitor, and a quiet lesson in humility. They understood that true artistry could appear in the most unexpected places. After the concert ended, the janitor was invited to sit briefly with the pianist and a few other musicians. They spoke about music, about practice, and about life. The conversation was simple, honest, and full of shared appreciation. The janitor did not boast or exaggerate, but his passion was evident, and everyone around him felt it. He spoke about the years of quiet practice, the love for music that had guided him, and the joy he felt in expressing what was inside him. Word of the janitor's performance spread quickly. People shared stories online, in newspapers, and through conversations with friends and family. The story of the humble janitor who had silenced a concert hall with his music became an inspiration. Many were moved not just by the skill, but by the courage it took to step forward despite being mocked. It reminded people that talent can exist in anyone, and that true greatness is often hidden in places where it is least expected. The janitor continued his work at the hall, but everything felt different now. He walked through the corridors with a quiet confidence, aware that people recognized his presence in a new light. Musicians and staff treated him with a mix of respect and curiosity. He still cleaned floors, dusted instruments, and handled everyday duties, but he carried with him the knowledge that he had left an impact, that his music had been heard and felt by many. Over the next few weeks, the janitor received invitations to perform at small gatherings and local events. He accepted a few cautiously, not seeking fame but wanting to continue sharing the music that had brought him joy and connected him with others. Each performance reinforced what he had learned, that music was not about titles or recognition, but about expression and connection. People responded warmly, and he felt the same thrill he had felt that night in the hall. The concert pianist reached out privately, offering guidance and encouragement. They shared tips, discussed pieces, and even invited the janitor to attend rehearsals to see the workings of a professional musician. The janitor was grateful, not for the prestige, but for the support and understanding from someone he had once seen as untouchable. The gesture reflected a transformation in both of them, a mutual recognition of talent and humility. As months passed, the janitor became a quiet symbol of inspiration. He did not seek the spotlight, but he no longer shied away from it. People began to understand that anyone, no matter their role in life, could possess extraordinary skill and heart. Children looked up to him, adults admired his courage, and musicians respected his dedication. The hall, once just a place of routine work, had become a stage where potential could be recognized and celebrated. The janitor's life did not change dramatically in terms of wealth or status, but something far more valuable had shifted. He felt seen, not for his position or job title, but for his talent and courage. The joy of playing music, the connection it created, and the respect it earned had given him a sense of fulfillment that no recognition or title could provide. He understood that his journey was not about becoming famous, but about being true to his passion and sharing it with those who could feel it. The story of that night continued to be told at the hall, each retelling emphasizing the power of courage, humility, and talent. Visitors to the hall often asked about the janitor, eager to hear the tale of the performance that silenced a room and captured hearts. The janitor himself remained modest, preferring to let the music speak rather than words, but he felt proud knowing that his actions had inspired others. One evening, years later, he returned to the hall for a special event. The atmosphere was familiar yet different, filled with anticipation and reverence. As he approached the piano, memories of that first bold step onto the stage returned vividly. He sat down, placed his hands on the keys, and began to play. The notes flowed effortlessly, filled with the same passion and heart as before, carrying the lessons of years of experience and reflection. The audience listened, moved, and inspired once again. Through it all, the janitor remained grounded. He had learned that true achievement was measured not by accolades, but by the ability to touch lives and connect with others. He had discovered that talent, when combined with courage and authenticity, could create moments of magic, moments that lingered far beyond the final note. And he had proven that no one's position or title could limit the reach of genuine skill and heartfelt expression. The hall continued to host performances. The pianist continued to play with skill and grace, and the janitor continued to sweep, polish, and maintain the space. Yet in the hearts of all who had witnessed that unforgettable night, the story lived on. It was a reminder that greatness could come from anywhere, that courage could overcome doubt, and that music, in its purest form, could unite, inspire, and transform. The janitor, once unnoticed, had become a quiet legend, showing the world that sometimes the most extraordinary talent comes from the most unexpected places.